This week's video is sponsored by NordVPN. As camera technology has improved, I find myself shooting more handheld photos than ever before. I think lighter gear, better stabilisation and insane low light performance have made it easier to leave the tripod at home. But recently, there's been one thing I've changed that's helped me get way more consistent results. So in today's video, I want to talk about how I choose the right ISO settings for when I'm shooting handheld, because I think it can actually make or break your photos. And by the way, welcome to the amazing Lake District National Park. So I'm here with Henry today and we're exploring a few different areas here. We've got Homefell to check out a bit later, and at the minute we're just exploring Hodge Close Quarry, which is absolutely amazing. I've actually been here before and got a few photographs, but yeah, not this time of year. And spring is in full bloom as well, which is absolutely amazing. There's some wonderful colour here. And of course, we're going to be talking about ISO and the best settings to choose, or at least the settings that I choose for my landscape photography when I'm shooting handheld. And hopefully that will help you out a bit along the way. So first of all, I'd just like to mention in-body image stabilization, or IBIS. And this essentially lets you shoot at slower shutter speeds than if you didn't have it. So theoretically, if I was shooting at 50mm on my zoom lens here, I would be able to get a sharp photograph at about 1/50th of a second. Now, if I turn my IBIS on, I can probably get my shutter speed as slow as maybe 1/4 or half a second without introducing any camera shake. So it's a very valuable tool to have. The issue is though, that only takes care of camera shake that we introduce ourselves. It doesn't account for motion blur from things that are moving within the scene. And quite often freezing that motion will require a very fast shutter speed. And this is where knowing your camera's ISO capabilities really comes into its own. So great to be back here in England. It's been about 4 years since I've been to the Lake District, so yeah, some considerable time. So it's really good to be back here taking photographs once again. Now, the light is a little bit on the harsh side right now, but I think over the next couple of hours it's going to be really nice because we've got a high level of diffused cloud which is just softening those shadows. So I think it'll be absolutely fantastic for these silver birch that are in this area, and the vibrant green colours are just absolutely fantastic. So yeah, I'm sure we'll be able to capture some photos over the next few hours. It really is stunning here though. Such a great time of year to be here. So going back to ISO, and as you probably know, every time we increase our ISO, it brightens the image and allows us to obtain a faster shutter speed. And this helps us to freeze motion blur within our frame. The trade-off being, the more we raise the ISO, the more noise we introduce into our photo. So every camera's ISO capabilities are different, so it's well worth looking into seeing what your camera can do. Now, what I tend to do for shooting handheld photos is set up a slot on my custom dials here on the top. And mine is C6, that's my handheld shooting. And what I tend to do is set it up at ISO 200. Now the base ISO on this camera is 125, so I've just increased the ISO a little bit, which helps me to quicken my shutter speed up. And it's set to automatically come on at 200, meaning if I want to take a shot quickly, I've just got a little bit of a faster shutter speed than I would have had if I'd been shooting at ISO 125. So this just helps just that little bit. And the noise between the two is really negligible. You really can't tell any difference. So it just helps a little bit, I think. Now, many cameras these days have a dual gain ISO, which is super important to know. My camera, the Fuji X-H2's dual gain ISO system, starts at ISO 500. This means that from ISO 500 and above, the camera utilises a second gain amplifier to process the image, providing reduced noise at higher ISO settings. The base ISO for the X-H2 is ISO 125. And as you can see here on the noise versus ISO chart on the Photos to Photons website, that there's the least amount of noise at the base ISO of 125. It then peaks at 400 before dropping back down at ISO 500. In fact, ISO 800 is about the same as ISO 400. So as you can see from the chart, if I had to raise my ISO to ISO 250, it might actually be more beneficial to raise it to 500 because the amount of noise would be pretty much similar and I'd be able to obtain a faster shutter speed. Now, of course, every camera is different, isn't it? And to check out yours, just search for your camera from the drop-down menu and you can see the chart and what will work for you. Now, there is another trade-off when it comes to raising ISO, which we'll get onto in just a bit, but I think it's time to find a photograph. So I've been playing around with a few different compositions here, looking both ways, but the light is very, very difficult right now. I think it's quite hazy, so it's very, very difficult to pick out these distant details. I've tried to use a polarizer. That's not really helping because I'm looking straight towards the light, but I have found quite a nice composition here. Yeah, I think it's quite a nice scene and the best I can do in the current conditions, and that's all you can ask for, isn't it? So yeah, we've been doing quite a bit of scouting today because we've got a couple of workshops over the next few days, and this is one of the locations we'll be visiting. But yeah, this evening we're heading right up to the top there to hopefully get some great views looking back towards the Langdales. So I've just been taking a quick break to upload and edit a few shots from yesterday's shoot, and I've got a couple of nice ones that I'll definitely be sharing very soon. Now, as someone who spends a lot of time working remotely, I'm often jumping between cafes, campsites and hotel Wi-Fi, and that's where this week's sponsor NordVPN gives me real peace of mind because it encrypts my connection so I know my data and my photos are safe wherever I upload from. On top of that, NordVPN's Threat Protection Pro offers advanced security against malware, phishing, scams and other online threats. You can head to nordvpn.com/Ian Worth to learn more about how that works. Now, one of the features I use most is the ability to switch my virtual location. It's really useful for booking travel or accessing websites and streaming services, like unlocking different Netflix libraries from around the world. There's a special link in my video description, nordvpn.com/Ian Worth. Clicking it helps to support this channel and it gives you an exclusive deal, 2 years of NordVPN plus 4 extra months. And if you're not satisfied, they offer a 30-day money-back guarantee as well, which is a fantastic offer. So a big thanks to NordVPN for keeping us safe and supporting this channel. Right, so what we're going to be doing this afternoon is we're going to be heading up Home Fell to see if we can find a few different images through the afternoon and sunset. I'm really looking forward to shooting up there. It's a fantastic location with an incredible view, and these spring vibrant colours are going to be fantastic. So yeah, I'm really hopeful we can capture a few images, and we'll carry on talking about getting sharp photos while shooting handheld and how to get the right ISO to make sure you're getting the very cleanest shots possible. Right, let's get cracking. We haven't seen anybody today. It's been completely deserted, which has been fantastic, and these really calm, tranquil conditions are just perfect. Now, I found a nice frame here looking across this little tarn towards the mountain beyond. We've got a spacing of different trees. There's a birch on the left, there's some pine on the left as well, a splattering of, I think they're maybe hawthorn hanging over on the right hand side, and a couple of dead trees as well. But what I really like is the space in between the trees. Now, what I'd like is the tarn here to be completely clear of ripples. At the minute there's just a very slight shimmer in the foreground and it's catching the light, and what that means is the eye gets drawn down. I really want the eye to be drawn towards the light hitting the mountainside in the background there and these trees. So yeah, I'm just waiting for the right moment. I'm being patient. Instead of running around trying to get lots of different photos, I think I'm going to stick with this one for a while and see if I can get the very best from it. But like I mentioned, there are a few other considerations when raising ISO, and the first one being dynamic range. So every time we raise our ISO, we also decrease the amount of dynamic range that we have in our image, and you can see this on the chart here, the ISO versus dynamic range chart. As you can see, every time that ISO is increased, our dynamic range decreases. So it's definitely something to bear in mind, because if you're faced with a scene with very dark shadows and very bright highlights, and you need to raise your ISO to freeze motion, you might find yourself having to bracket more often if you're shooting at, say, ISO 800 or ISO 1600 or something like that. So it's just another consideration to bear in mind when you raise your ISO. Now, my patience has finally paid off, because the tarn is now completely clear of ripples, which is absolutely fantastic, because it means I can get a really nice dark foreground, which really helps the eye transition up to the mountains and those trees in the background. I just felt before it was a little bit distracting. So at the minute I'm shooting at f8, ISO 200 and 80th of a second. 80th of a second is absolutely fine here. Actually, everything is completely still pretty much, and yeah, it's allowing me to be able to shoot this at 80th of a second, so no need to raise my ISO anymore. I could actually drop it down if I wanted to, but I'm going to go ahead and shoot this now, and the light is just fantastic. It really is. And I think actually, even though there's not a huge amount of detail in the sky, there's a little bit of wispy white cloud up there, and I think it just helps to soften the image. I think if the sky up there was too dramatic, there'd just be too much going on in the image. So yeah, calmness in the foreground, calmness in the sky, and yeah, a really nice mid-ground. So hopefully it's a decent shot. I think it's probably the best one I've got so far. But anyway, I'm going to see if we can find another one, and I've got a few more points I'd like to talk about before we head off. So I moved a little bit further around the tarn, and I'm shooting the opposite way now towards a couple of silver birch trees that are just getting their spring green leaves. Absolutely fantastic. Now I'm using the tarn as my foreground interest, just to keep the foreground nice and soft. There's some reeds on the right hand side which are quite nice, and the light is just in the center of the frame. It's just catching those two birch trees, which looks really nice. And at the minute the light is warm and diffuse, which also works well for this particular shot, I think. Now, ISO wise, I'm shooting at ISO 200 as before, and I'm at 80th of a second, so plenty of shutter speed. I don't really need to raise it anymore, because there's very little movement in these leaves here. Now, one thing I always do when I'm shooting either with a telephoto lens or maybe at the long end of my standard zoom lens like I am now, I'll always check the foliage in my foreground, even though I'm not shooting there, because if things are moving in my foreground, it's likely they're moving back there as well. It just gives you a bit of an indication, if you like, of what's going on back there, because sometimes you can't really see what's going on, can you? And if things are moving back there and your shutter speed's not fast enough, obviously there's going to be motion blur in your image, which can lead to a mushy, soft image, which isn't obviously great. But things are super calm right now. It's so nice. It's absolutely lovely. Anyway, I'm going to go shoot this photo now. I'm at 80th of a second, f8, ISO 200. There we go. I could even reduce my ISO to 125, but I'm going to leave it there, I think. Absolutely lovely. Yeah, really like that shot, actually. So I was just talking to Henry back there, and we're both saying, you know, how fortunate we've been over the last hour or so. The conditions have been really nice. You know, we've been out all day, and we've struggled, to be honest. The light's been very harsh, but yeah, this last hour or so has just been magical. Really soft, warm, diffused light, cool shadows in the mountains beyond. Absolutely fantastic. Now, what I'm planning to do is head up to the ridgeline there to see what's over the other side. Not been up this section before, so interesting to find out. Yeah, what an absolutely beautiful evening. So I've reached this viewpoint here, which is absolutely amazing. As you can probably see, 360-degree panoramic views, absolutely wonderful. So the light is really nice right now, lighting up all of these wonderful birch and larch trees. It looks absolutely fantastic. However, picking out a composition has not been easy. Put the telephoto lens on, tried to zoom right into the background there just to try to get the layering effect. But I felt it was a little bit too tight, so I've gone back to my standard zoom lens. I think it's one of those rare occasions where the missing focal length I have between 50 and 70mm might have actually been ideal for the shot. But anyway, we're going with 50mm, taking a nice shot of these mountains as they recede into the haziness beyond, which is quite nice. The light is just catching these trees down here as well, which I might shoot in just a second. But let's take another one back here, about 100th of a second, f8. Some lovely colours, and the separation is really nice as well. So as the light is fading, I just thought I'd mention about, raising ISO. I think it's one of those things to not be afraid of. It's something to embrace. I know when I first started, I was always a little bit, I guess, dubious about raising my ISO too much. But I think another good thing to remember as well is there's some amazing software out there that will allow you to reduce noise in your images as well. Even Lightroom's AI tools are fantastic now for reducing noise. But there's other programs as well, like Pure Raw, and a few others that are well worth checking out that can do incredible things to a noisy image. So yeah, just a few other considerations as well. Anyway, a massive thanks for watching this week's video. If you did like it, please be sure to give it a like and subscribe for more weekly content. The video up here will take you to another one that you might enjoy, and there's a link over here which is a link to my ebook on composition, which you may find helpful. Anyway, I do hope to see you all again next week. Take care.